Welcome to another episode of Unscripted Pivots. I'm your host, Danielle, and today we have an incredibly insightful conversation lined up for you. We're diving into the essential topic of psychological safety in the workplace, a subject that's not only relevant but crucial in today's competitive business environment. Joining us today is Dr. Cheri O'Nan, a renowned leadership development and psychological safety consultant with over 20 years of experience in the field. Dr. Onan discovered her passion for leadership and organizational development at Chapman University and has since earned a master's and doctorate in organizational leadership. Her professional journey has taken her from academic research to hands-on consulting with Fortune 50, 100, and 500 companies, helping the link strategic initiatives like increased revenue and decreased turnover, all the way to enhanced leadership skills and behaviors. In this episode today, we're going to be exploring the groundbreaking work from her dissertation on, quote, employee engagement, brain-based psychological safety in the sales professional, and discuss practical strategies for fostering psychological safety in your own organization. Dr. O'Nan's, her expertise is backed by numerous certifications. Okay, so buckle up. She's got DISC, MBTI, and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, making her a leading voice in the field. Join us as we uncover the importance of psychological safety, the behaviors that promote it, and how it can transform leadership and organizational culture. Thank you for coming on, Cheri. So nice to have you on Unscripted Pivots.
It is so great to be on today, Danielle. We're talking about one of my favorite topics in the whole wide world. So thanks for having me on today.
And you are a voice to be heard along these lines. There's so much about you that I just absolutely adore. I usually start by telling the listeners how I know the woman that I met. We met in Orange County. We have so many friends in common, and I just follow her like a little puppy. She does so many things that I'm just like enamored with, and she is just wonderful. I want to know a little bit about your unscripted pivots in your life, Cheri, that made you interested in organizational culture and psychological safety. Like, what incited you to go down this path?
That's a big question. And first of all, ditto. I follow Danielle around and do the same thing. So we are in a mutual admiration society for sure. I found the field of leadership development 20 years ago. I was in technology. And while I loved the customer side of the house, I absolutely did not enjoy technology. We'll put it that way. And so I found myself just kind of really at a lot of angst, a lot of unhappiness in my career. I just kind of went on this mad journey to figure out, what am I passionate about? There's an old book called What Color Is Your Parachute? I did an interview. I love it. I recommend it all the time.
Yeah.
And it led me to my master's in organizational leadership. And that was over 20 years where I found my passion for organizational and leadership development. I didn't even know it was an industry before then. And so I've been in the industry ever since and just absolutely love this industry.
Well, you hear more and more about it. There seems to be an acceptance or even a requirement that everybody look at their organizational culture. And there's a shift away from what traditionally was like the hierarchy of leadership and the inability for the lower people, or I shouldn't even call it lower people, but like the colleagues that weren't in the C-suite to actually have a voice or feel comfortable enough to express their opinions. And that leads to a real loss in contributory, brilliance that gets silenced because they're not where, in the top-notch, corner offices and whatnot. And so it's wonderful to explore today what it's like to give people the safety around not suppressing themselves in an organization, right? And when you contribute, you're actually invested in a different way. At least that's been my experience. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing in your leadership development role and just dive in.
You bet. Well, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, you can pick up my dissertation. And I will tell you, an academic dissertation is it's not a fun read. But in there, you bring up a really great point, because I talk about in there, we kind of start with the industrial mentality around leading and managing people. And it's kind of the legacy of our country, right? And it came from people are widgets and they can be replaced, and you tell them what to do. And if they don't do it, you I mean, employees in the turn of the 19th century, they would get beaten. They literally would get physically beaten. And so we've been in this evolutionary process where employees have a wide array of choices now. And I will tell you, COVID was a game changer because all of a sudden employees can choose. They have so many other choices. There are so many organizations that opened the door to virtual work that were closed to even having any employees work virtually. And so, it really has, the employee has a lot stronger voice now. Not only that, the research out there is really tied to the fact that, like, my research is around when psychological safety in an organization goes up, employee engagement goes up, and results go up. There is no question about that. And so there is a direct data tie to what I happen to be the most passionate about in life as far as building psychological safety within your work culture.
It's so interesting to me when we consider how COVID really changed the game plan, to your point, where you can be virtual, because to be remote really widens, right, the playing field and the options that are available. And so in order to secure that preferred employee and to get the talent that you want in your company, you're going to have to, allow them to have not only the flexibility of remote work, but to have a voice to contribute in a way that probably didn't exist before. Yeah.
It's been a big game changer.
So
for sure.
you're like your day to day. You go into companies and are you debriefing them on how they can change? And are there barriers to that? Are they, people don't like to consider it criticism? How open are the leaders and who are the leaders that you're talking to?
Yeah. So truly oftentimes, the primary organizations I work with do tend to be larger organizations. And so they usually have leadership development talent in place that is responsible for developing leaders. And oftentimes there are competencies or behaviors that the leaders that they've identified that, gosh, if these leaders were more like this, then we would truly get better results, right? It'll create there's something right now. The big topic is human-centered leadership.
Okay.
And so that's a big conversation going on, right? That's a buzzword going on right now, human-centered leadership. And psychological safety really came on. And so oftentimes organizations, I hear more and more in the organizations I consult with the word psychological safety. And really the legacy of where that came from is it has been around a while. So it actually showed up in the research in 1965 tied to change. That was the first time it appeared in the research. And a couple of researchers said, hey, when people feel safer, they actually can navigate through change more. But that was it. And then it appeared again in 1990 around employee engagement. And Dr. William Kahn did research and he went, wow, employees actually are able to engage more in their jobs when they feel safe, right? And so the topic kind of came on board. And then Amy Edmondson started doing her research around psychological safety. So there's a reason I give you that history, because Google in 2015, the company Google, did an internal study, and it was a 3-year meta study. And they actually studied over 180 teams and 600 employees. And they wanted to know, what's the difference between this team over here that's exhibiting success and this team over here that's not? And it sounds simple, but it was not. And they could not crack the code. It's like people that looked exactly the same over here, had exactly the same skills, were knocking it out of the ballpark. And over here, they weren't doing so hot on this team, results-wise. And they stumbled across Amy Edmondson's research around psychological safety. And they went, that's it. It's psychological safety that is making these teams feel. And so she identifies psychological safety. And can I as an employee take a risk around here? If I say, hey, I've got a great idea, and Danielle's my boss and goes, what?
Yeah.
You're not going to hear from me again.
It all starts from the leadership.
Shut my voice down.
Yeah.
Right. It does. So that article was published in 2015. And so you're seeing it's kind of been this trickle effect where organizations are starting to catch on to, this is really something. When we create psychological safety, employees are more engaged and results go up. Creativity goes up. all sorts of great things happen.
And I just want for the listeners that don't know who Amy Edmondson is, because I did not know who she was until I prepared for this conversation with Cheri, which is what is so beautiful about doing these podcasts. She is a leader in her field, to Cheri's point, but she is a Novartis professor of leadership and management at the Harvard Business School, and she's written several books on this topic, and she's really admired and recognized as a leading voice in this field. So referencing her is completely appropriate. I love just having looked at a couple of things to better understand what it is you do. I mean, when I think about psychological safety, I didn't know how deep it was, like all the branches that it touches across an organizational culture. So I want to continue the conversation. Can you give us, like, without, divulging any, private information, is and no confidentiality. We don't want to do anything wrong with that, but, case studies or things like that, you alluded to just now, but that you have experienced where, a company has really transformed itself once it was brought to their attention and they were willing to implement the strategies that you were offering.
Yeah. So here's the thing about psychological safety. It's a broad umbrella. So
Hmm.
I wish I could tell you that you just go do this one thing and your employees are psychologically safe. So oftentimes there are numerous, a leader, first of all, and this is my passion in this
Yeah.
field and in
Yeah.
this topic, a leader has to be self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
A leader has to be self-aware. If I am acting in a way that I don't realize is harming my team, that's not going to do, I'm going to keep acting in the way that I'm acting until I get feedback. And
Mm-hmm.
so you asked for a case study. And so without divulging anything, sometimes organizations will start with a 360 assessment so
Mm-hmm.
that leaders actually have to take a look at where they are and who they are, because that starts to surface. I can't deny when somebody has given me feedback surrounding me,
Mm-hmm.
that's coming back. And so often that involves like an executive coach. And so it's an ongoing awareness around things like building trust. And not only trust, but an interesting factor, Danielle, would be accountability. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes people look at something like psychological safety and go, oh, that sounds so fluffy. You know, if you are on a team, I want you to envision this. You're on a team and you don't know what to do and when to do it, and there's not structure and nobody's holding anybody, that's not going to feel safe to a human being. And so anyway, so there are, you know, a focus has to be placed on psychological safety first with the leader, and the leader kind of understanding what keeps themselves psychologically safe, and then moving out into the team. And so often training is involved around building trust, around some team initiatives, sometimes personality assessments where the team members understand one another better. There's all sorts of interventions that you can do. The number one reason that an employee will leave a company, and I'm sure you can attest to this, and all your listeners will resonate with this, I'm sure. The number one reason that somebody leaves an organization is their manager, according to
Mm-hmm.
Gallup. It's the number one reason.
Yeah.
And so, just building that safety. I wanted to talk a little bit too about the why behind psychological safety, if that's okay.
Oh no, bring
Because
it on. Yeah,
I
this is
studied
critical. Yeah.
I studied brain-based psychological safety, and I want to give you a few factors of why one of my goals is that when you walk into an organization, the organization says, hey, Danielle, we care just as much about your psychological safety as we do about your physical safety. And here's why. The brain cannot tell the difference between if you were to, if let's say you're my manager and we're in a group of fellow employees,
Mm-hmm.
and you say something disparaging to me, the same part of my brain will light up as if you punched me in the face. My
Wow.
brain,
Okay.
my
Mm-hmm.
brain cannot tell the difference between a psychological injury and a physical injury. The difference is that my brain will hold on to a psychological injury way longer. So if you try and think of a time that you were physically injured, I guarantee you, if you think back to a time where you got hurt, your brain cannot recall what that pain feels like. If you recall back to a time when you were a child and
Mhm.
somebody said or did something to you and it psychologically injured you,
Yeah.
you can recall that like that. The reason that we have a hard time with this is because 11 million bits of information are coming at us per second. In my environment, I am right now getting 11 million bits of information. Guess how many bits of information my brain can process? 40 to 50. So what happens is we have all these different experiences within us that are below our subconscious that we begin to operate in unconscious ways, right? There's over 180 identified biases. We have all these ways of operating we don't even know that we're
Yeah.
operating in. And so when you combine the fact that most of us aren't even aware when we are feeling threatened, when we are feeling triggered, and if I'm a leader or a manager and I get threatened and triggered and I don't know it, guess who it's going to come out on?
Oh, yes.
Everybody around
Yes.
me.
Mhm.
So this topic it's so critical. There's many, many ways to develop it, but I just wanted to set the why of why we're discovering psychological safety is so important. And most of us, this is the last data point I'll tell you for a hot minute. We are 5% conscious. We are
Really?
3 to 5% conscious. 95% of what we do is under the surface. So we are operating. And so it's really important when we talk about this topic of psychological safety or any topic that's important that we understand those things, because I'm about keeping myself safe and I'm learning more and more how to do that. It's fascinating work. And then once I am more inclined to keep myself safe, I can keep others safe around me. And that's kind of one of the cruxes of this work.
So what are some of the practical steps that a leader can take to improve the psychological safety and, a better culture for the employees?
Yeah. So there are in my research that I did, I actually worked with the Academy of Brain-Based Research.
Mhm.
And what they do is a good example of, they actually have a safety assessment. And so there's 5 elements that we need that our brain goes, okay, I'm safe. They actually spell safety. So it's feeling secure. It's
Mhm.
feeling autonomous. It spells safety,
Yeah.
fairness, esteem, trust. So if you look at those areas, any one of those areas, we all have different needs, but building trust within an organization is critical. And building trust with employees. That's why the human-centered leadership, it's like sometimes leaders get into a leadership position and they forget it's like they get amnesia. They forget what it was like to be an employee. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden you're being talked to in a certain way just because the leader's having a bad day. And you're
Yeah.
like, hold on, let's step back and think about when you were the employee, how would you have felt being talked to that way? Would that have made you more productive? I mean, sometimes really it boils down to
You
what you
know,
learned in kindergarten.
without discounting the importance of this, because I'm wholly on board, and I embrace this direction and I want to see it continue to flourish. There's something that's coming to me right now because you always get that, one or two employees that just seem like they're just so overly sensitive about everything, and there would be no way to actually work with them. And it reminds me, I don't want to call out the millennials, and I forget what generation comes after that, but it's almost like when I think
Z,
about what it
Gen
looked
Z.
like, Gen Z. Okay, so Gen Z came after the millennials? No, they're before the millennials, no? Okay. In any event,
We're
it goes
Gen
it
Z.
goes baby boomers, which apparently I am one, even though I'm like 2 days away from being the next thing. I thought that then Gen
Xers,
X, then Xers, and
Gen
you're an
X,
Xer, and then there's the millennials, and then there's the Ys. Who knows
Gen
what there is?
Z.
Okay. And anyway, but the point is that when I started to work and do things like that, not that I remember being abused. I think I was pretty much insulated in the categories I chose to work in, but it was kind of like, the school of hard knocks. Like you were going to learn it and things were a little tougher. And I don't mean that takes, it was emotionally abusive, but it's interesting to me, even you see it in the school systems, how protected students are, almost like overcorrecting the situation. Right. So my head just went there for a second. And I thought,
Mm.
yes, but I also like to think that we have to maintain a sense of balance. So I'm
Can I
diverting a
speak
little
to
bit.
that real quick?
Please,
You're
please
not
do.
you're not diverting at all. You just tripped on an area that it's one of my most passionate areas, actually.
Oh, good.
There's a lot of talk right now going on about the leader. I feel bad for leaders right now in corporate America. I work with a lot of them. When I say I feel bad for them, there's a lot being put on their shoulders, and a lot of pressure. And now that we have psychological safety, there's a lot of this pressure of like, hey, leader, you need to be leading your team in a psychologically safe way. Okay. What I feel is missing, and I'm passionate about this, is the employee's choice and power. Leaders are not therapists. They are not, they're not designed, leaders get hired because for their character, but guess what they get fired for? Results. Well, sometimes character.
No, but that's true.
They have results that they are driving in an organization. The onus to me is also on the employee to be able to be responsible for your own psychological safety. And the research shows that employees that are proactive and have good emotional regulation tend to be more, that tends to be a couple of the secret sauce areas for an employee to be able to contribute with psychological safety. And so I'm really passionate about talking with organizations holistically and saying, hey, if we teach proactivity and we teach why wouldn't I want to know as an employee, I have choices. I have personal power to help drive the business results around here, right? It's not just me sitting back and folding, not that there's any generation sitting back and folding sometimes I feel like some of the generations get a bad rap. And I think that's always been the case. Generations have always looked backwards. True. But there's the reality that I do feel like the onus is on everybody to first create your own psychological safety, for sure.
No, it's such a valid point. Because immediately I didn't know who I wanted to defend. I come into this wanting to defend the employee. And then I thought, geez, that's hard. That's really a hard burden to put on a leader, especially
Absolutely
since it's relatively new in how you would do it. And I love that you were distinguishing between what their job actually was, and therapists and things along those lines is not one of them. Because at the same time, it shouldn't be an out, right? The employee still needs to be accountable for their work and what they're doing, and not hide behind any self-imposed sensitivities, right? There's got to be a line. Let me ask you this: when you go out and you do your work, what industries seem to be most favored on getting on board with improving their psychological safety? Like, is it tech? Is it law firms? Is it finance? What are you seeing out there?
I don't personally see it as an industry. I will tell you the healthcare industry is really big right now on psychological safety. I do see that, and I've been exposed to that. But and my head is scrolling through all the different organizations that I work with. I think it more really has to do with the leadership of the organization and the direction that organization or the direction that the leadership team takes the organization, rather than the type of industry that they're in, truly. Because an evolved leader that understands that I need to have a human-centered environment, and that creates psychological safety, and I'm going to get better results. And a leader that truly understands that, you can find them in all sorts of industries.
I just was wondering if there was any kind of favorite industry.
That's a great question.
Healthcare. Now, and you know what I'm also wondering? How many companies or leadership entities do they enlist your help, or help along these lines after something's gone terribly wrong? Like, are they trying to correct an existing issue, or are they starting these new companies and they're saying, this is the mindset that we have at the top, and so we want to give birth to this right from the beginning? What are you seeing?
What's fascinating, you would think that organizations that are in the most pain would be the ones that go, I kind of get it. It's truly not. It goes back to the leadership team. And usually you will find organizations that are already good and they're wanting to get, it's like the Good to Great, Jim Collins, right? And so you'll see these organizations doing activities like employee engagement surveys. And with
Okay.
those surveys, pulse surveys, they're going out and they're asking their employees, how are things? And they're getting feedback. And with that feedback, they're doing something about it. And so there's this virtual circle of organizations continuing to get better and better.
Okay. Well, you've been like an academic, person on fire lately. I know your doctorate, undergoing all that, and then writing your dissertation. Every time I'd see you, you're like, I can't come out. This is what I have to do. And no, I know how dedicated. We just had somebody on
Beware.
last week too that just got her PhD, and that is no joke.
It's
So
no
that,
joke.
yeah, really, really difficult. And again, congratulations on that accomplishment. But it seems that a little bird told me that you're like really still in the writing mode. Is it true that you're writing a book? I want to hear, I love to hear when women are becoming authors, that weren't before or that don't do it as a profession, but they're taking their
Right.
passion and they're putting that passion to paper. So if you'd like to share with our listeners what you're doing along those lines, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, it was funny. I'd love to.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times people will do doctoral research and they never want to look at it again because it is, but let me just tell you, it is I don't even have words for what that's like. And I've talked to many colleagues who've gotten a doctorate and they're like, I don't even want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I feel so blessed that I really, really am passionate about what I did and what I went and studied. And, from that, and because the topic of psychological safety is really, to me, it's just getting stronger and stronger. And so I wanted to write a business book to be able to offer to the business community and to leaders. I started writing that book, and a colleague of mine, Christine, said, oh my, okay. We're long-term friends and she's a client. She goes, please don't write another one of those boring business books. And so I started down the road of truly writing a boring business book. I got about 66 pages in, and I was boring myself. I had just come off of academic writing and academic research, and I thought, this is putting me to sleep. It's going to put leaders, all the information's in there. And at the same time, I am this is funny, or not, maybe scary for some people, but I actually love vampires. I have loved vampire movies since I watched Salem's Lot when I was a teenager.
Okay.
So I just went and I thought, I'm not going to write that. I'm going to go write a vampire book. And I had started one a few years back before I started, into all of this. And so I went and started playing around in that again and got in a creative space again. And people kept asking me, are you going to combine those two? And I kept saying, that's ridiculous. I need a business book. Business books are not vampire books. Well, guess what? I am in the process of writing a book about, it's a fable. It's a business fable.
Okay.
The working title is Vampires Inc., a business fable, sink your teeth into psychological safety.
Oh,
And it's
I love it. Oh,
it's
that
about
is so great.
It's about a corporate vampire, and he was actually born in the industrial age when command and control was the thing. And he's been compelling people in the business world as long as he's been a vampire because he can. It's easy. He just runs around. He hits a leader who's all into psychological safety named Sam, and she can't be compelled. So all of a sudden, he's having to either leave the company that he's in or change his ways and learn how to be a psychologically safe leader because the gig is up for him. And so at the end of each chapter, I'm providing takeaways and tools where people can actually pull out the tools of what is critical in the business world, but hopefully they have a little bit of fun. So all the tools and the lack of psychological safety and positive psychological safety are woven throughout what's hopefully a fun business fable to read. So we'll see how that goes. I told my business coach, I said, I can't believe I'm hanging my doctoral career and hat on a vampire book for the business world. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned.
But here's the thing. It's never been done. So this is what you're bringing to the forefront,
I can't fight it.
Yeah. No, and this is what makes it so darn special. And from everything you just shared, you're incorporating what would be the pertinent research findings in something a little bit more lighthearted and relatable to an audience that perhaps really couldn't digest all the drier information like delivered that way. So really you have widened the lens and you've made it more creative. I don't think we ever go wrong when we get creative, and we keep it, transparent and informative, and it's really something that you're doing which is helpful. So what? Put some vampires in there,
Oh, I'm
and
having
do.
so much fun.
And you know what? It's like anything else, Cheri. The people, I in my coaching profession, I'll have so many people. Well, I don't see. They see the obstacles first sometimes, or when they're exhausted, because it's already been invented or already been done, and they don't really see why they should be putting so much sweat equity into a project. Right? We get to that, like, oh, okay, I'm going to abandon this and I'm going to pivot to somewhere else. And I'm like, no, you're
Right.
not. I'm your accountability partner. You're going to stay the path because you know what? It's never been done your way, Sally's way, Jennifer's way, and this is now Cheri's way. And so this is why this is so important. I can't wait for that to come out. And I'm over here, writing a book as much as I can spend time to do that. We're all pushing forward, and you know what?
Absolutely.
I am celebrating that we're going for it.
Yeah,
And
we
that
are.
we're allowing ourselves to be creative while still being really professional. I mean, when I
Yeah.
came out as the WTF lady, there was a minute there and somebody else said to me, "This is who you are," and I was thinking, "Is that appropriate? Is that really right? Is that too like?" And you know what? No, it totally fits. And then once you understand why, just like your book will fit when they see the content of what it is that you're delivering. So I
Well,
think
I have
that's
to tell
very,
you, watching you, Danielle, we'll
yeah,
pivot to you for a moment. When you started doing all this and launching, WTF and the work that you shared that you were doing, and I began following it, when someone's in their lane. And
yeah, right.
I mean, it has been such an honor to get to watch you just continue to make this work happen, because it's so important and it's really an honor to get to be a part of it.
Well, it's very sweet of you to say. And that's not to say that
And
every
it,
time we're on that lane that it doesn't get muddy or, the weather doesn't come in
ooh,
and you're saying, wait a minute, you know what, or now I'm walking on gravel. I mean, there are those times where, but I absolutely do not question this direction. And it's not even one that I chose so much as somebody bigger than myself chose it for me. And I'm just like following that path and really mostly in faith. But you're right. I enjoy it. And I think that shows through and what it looks like. I am
absolutely.
just so fascinated by what you're doing, and I can't wait. Do we have an idea as to when the book will come out?
I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the year. So
Okay.
I will definitely, I have a lot of other projects and things going on. And so it's an aggressive timeline, but that's my
Hmm.
timeline and so far so good as far as being on track for that timeline. So we'll see.
So it'll be a 2025 baby, and I will look forward. I'll be like the first one buying it and celebrating all that you're doing and putting it out there that you have accomplished this.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
People are
so
funny. They're
much.
like, you should show up for your keynotes with like vampire teeth. And they've
Oh
got
yeah,
all sorts of fun ideas for,
take the
I'm like,
creativity to the
why
next.
not?
But you know what? Just why not? You have the long dark hair. You want to own it, right? And just have fun. No, and have fun with it because look
That's
at
awesome.
your. I'm glad we're talking about this for a second. Look at your track record. Look at all that you've done. There's nothing to suggest that you haven't really embodied all of this. I mean, you have a doctorate. You have a PhD, doctor. Okay, the PhD. So if there's going to be a side of you that delivers this with a little flair, you know what I say to that? Make it memorable. Make it memorable and make it fun because it all goes back to people will remember how you make them feel, right? Not so much what you say, but how you make them feel. And that whole package just resonates with me. So I like that somebody made that suggestion and I hope you follow it. And you know what? Along those lines, we're going to have Halloween before she puts out the book. So I'm going to get extra stuff along like the vampire. And I'll just have it in a little bag for her and say, here, play with this as you go. And I'll be the first one in the audience.
That
So
would be funny. I love
yeah,
it.
I absolutely. So thank you so much for coming on Unscripted Pivots. I
And
just
Amana.
love to what you're doing and following you. And is there other than LinkedIn, and it'll be in the show notes how to follow you. Is there anything you want to give a shout out to?
Just if anybody has any questions, I love speaking about the topic of psychological safety. Speaking is one of my absolute favorite things to do. And so if anybody needs a speaker around psychological safety, I do that quite a bit and really, really enjoy it. So you can reach me at drpsychsafety@gmail.com.
Okay, excellent. And we'll have that written in the show notes. And so yeah, so she's for hire for and you have been. And so I've only heard great things about the deliveries you've made on your presentations. And so I hope somebody takes advantage of that. Thanks for
I have
coming
fun with
on.
it. I love it.
All right.
Thank you,
We'll talk
Danielle.
soon.
It's been a pleasure. Take
My
care.
pleasure.